to order.
I have 6:02, Joe.
Yeah, okay, we got everybody. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, on March 29, 2023, Governor Maura Healey signed into law an act making appropriations for the fiscal year 2023 to provide for supplementing certain existing appropriations for certain other activities and projects. This act includes an extension until March 31st, 2025 of the remote meeting provisions. The February 3rd, 2025 board meeting will be conducted via remote participation by the board. I will grant permission to the Westwood Media Center to record the meeting, and to anyone else who wishes to record. Looks like we got Jack here. Excuse me. If you would like to submit a question, please use the Q&A feature found in the Zoom. If you would like to be recognized to speak, please use the raise your hand feature. In a way to be recognized, all speakers will have a minimum, a 2-minute limit, and must give their name and their address. Did I miss anything on that, Tish?
No, that was fine.
No,
Okay.
and by the time we get to May, Joe, you'll have it rolling right off your tongue and you'll probably be saying it in your sleep.
I wouldn't count on it, buddy. Okay, let me get down here. Let's see.
Mr. Chair, before you begin, I think I see town council has his hand up.
Oh, shoot, what did I do wrong already?
No. You didn't do
I don't
it.
see it.
Inadvertent hand up, mea culpa.
All right, let's start. Chair's update. First of all, I want to congratulate Deputy Fire Chief Christian Pierce for his completing a program at the Mass Fire Academy for new fire leaders. Would also like to take a minute here just to comment on our last meeting. Jeff, then I'll come in. I do have to comment. That was not a regularly scheduled meeting. That was unexpectedly requested. The agenda for that 129 meeting was very clear. It had one scheduled item, FY26 budget discussion. Several of you have contacted me in regards to discussions, that is, people outside the public, that was not on the agenda, specifically the citizen petition for the annual town meeting and postings on Facebook. Because those items were not on the agenda, we probably should not have discussed them. I want to apologize for not doing my job as chair. I should have stopped the discussion. I could have done a better job, and I should have done a better job, and I will in the future. Lastly, budgetary process is never easy at home or at work, and it can be stressful. That does not mean virtues like civility, decency, and manners can be abandoned. Actually, on the contrary, just the opposite. It's during these times we must all be respectful, polite, and carry on accordingly. And with that, I will move on to Jeff. Do you want to read the part about Bill, or would you like me to read that?
It's up to you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to discuss it,
Well, look,
so it's up to you, whatever you prefer.
yeah, let me. We're coming up to the 50th anniversary of Officer William Sheehan's passing in the line of duty. Bill was a friend of mine. I was on duty that night, and it's one of those things that's etched that you just never forget. Jeff, why don't you take it?
Sure. So back on February 11th, 1975, then Officer William Sheehan was on patrol. He was with his partner, Robert O'Donnell, who stayed with us, fortunately, and retired a lieutenant from the job. When they came across a vehicle on the side of the road, they went to go investigate that, and it turns out a murder had just occurred. The driver had just shot his business partner and passenger. He was deceased in the car. And when the officers were walking up to the car just to make sure everything was okay, Officer Sheehan was fired upon, as was his partner. Officer Sheehan was killed almost instantly in the line of duty. He was fatally wounded. His partner, Officer O'Donnell, was able to return fire. He struck the assailant. Thank God his partner survived and was able to work with us the rest of his career. The assailant survived and he went to prison. His grandson, Officer Sheehan's grandson, who never obviously got to meet his grandfather, his namesake, Officer William Sheehan, works with us today. He was a correctional officer, continued in the line of family service, and then became a police officer. Every year on the 11th of February, we acknowledge that tremendous sacrifice that not only Officer Sheehan made, but Officer O'Donnell made. Thank God he lived through it, and the families of those officers. It was a tragic day. As the board knows, I worked in New Bedford for 20 years, and many people, when they talk about my previous service and my service in Westwood, they talk about how dangerous that must have been and the things that went on in New Bedford. And I tell them that there were some dangerous things that go on, but danger doesn't know zip code. And New Bedford lost one officer in the line of police service, in the line of duty, as did Westwood. And tragedy can happen anywhere, and it happened here in Westwood. So this year, on the 50th anniversary of Officer Sheehan's murder, we'd like to take special attention to this date. We'd like to acknowledge it. Some of our union officials and our officers throughout the Westwood Police Association came to me, in particular, Union President Sergeant Joe Rashid, Sergeant Chris Elcock, but it was a group discussion among the members, and asked that we in some way, in addition to recognizing the date, try to do something special. So in the packet before you, you'll see that the Westwood Police Association, working with the town and working with the DPW officials, had a memorial plaque made that is designed to mount over a street sign. And the general area of where this tragic event took place was Canton and Downey streets. And we're seeking the board's approval to take note, as the board always does, and recognize the passing of Officer Sheehan, recognize the 50th anniversary of his passing, and allow the DPW to mount this memorial plaque, which will mount on top of the street sign by Canton and Downey, to acknowledge this tragic event. So that's why I'm here before you tonight.
Thank you, Jeff. Well done. And if any of your members of the department are interested, there was a book written on the class of 1966 by Rick Atkinson called The Long Gray Line. And I have no idea how he described it so well as to what exactly happened that evening. It was just breathtaking. Tremendous author, tremendous. Mary Ann, what would you like to say?
Thank you, Joe. Chief, I'd like to say thank you to you and the Westwood Police Association for bringing this forward to us to honor the sacrifice that was made, the ultimate sacrifice made by Officer Sheehan and his family, as well as the sacrifice of Officer O'Donnell and his family. I completely support this effort, and I hope that the sign is a very visible reminder of the sacrifices made by them, and also a visible reminder of the sacrifices that are made every day by our public safety team, all of our police officers and firefighters who put themselves in harm's way to protect us every day. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't know that I can add anything more eloquent than what Mary Ann just said, but I would like to echo my thanks to Officer Sheehan's family, as well as to you, Chief, and all of the men and women of the WPD.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And
I'd be remiss if I didn't say, oftentimes people in the community will talk to me about little snippets they see in the local newspaper or so forth, or they, I've heard the comment, I don't know how many times, well, nothing ever happens in Westwood. And I would say to you that the fact that I'm not holding press conferences out on the front lawn of the police station like I used to do when I was a public information officer in New Bedford on an almost daily basis doesn't mean that things haven't happened, like with Officer Sheehan, and that things don't happen every single day. The news only reports the planes that crash, tragically, as we've seen lately, not the ones that land. And as you so eloquently put out, the members of our public safety team, police and fire, are engaged in dangerous things every single day. So Westwood is a very safe community, and it's a great community, and we're proud of it. But it doesn't mean that the inherent danger in that job isn't ever present. It is. And I'd just be remiss if I didn't remind the community of that. I'm glad that they feel safe. I'm glad, and I know they say it in jest, that they say, well, nothing ever happens in Westwood. I can tell you firsthand, that's the furthest things from the truth. The work that our team is doing is selfless. It's very brave, and we appreciate it. I know the board does too, and I know the community does, but it's just, I think it needs to be mentioned. So thank you so much for that support.
Thank you, Jeff. Mary Ann, would you like to make a motion?
I will move, excuse me, that the select board approve a memorial hero sign to be mounted to or adjacent to the street sign at the intersection of Canton and Downey streets, and to designate this intersection in Officer William E. Sheehan's memory.
Second that motion.
Roll call. Mary Ann?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Aye as well. Motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Chris?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. One update, I just want to thank the men and women of our public works and facility teams for the work they did. They reported last night at 9 a.m. to clear our streets, sidewalks, walkways, and around our municipal buildings. They worked through the evening, through today. I just want to thank all of them for their work, their continued service, and their extra efforts in making Westwood safe and an envy of other towns. We often get contacted. I know Molly and I often get contact from some colleagues saying, how does your DPW get this work done the way they get it done? So we just want to make sure that we share the words that we hear and appreciate the work that they do.
Thank you, Chris. Anything else?
No, Mr. Chair.
Let's move on to the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA self-evaluation and transition plan presentation. We have Megan Dufresne, the Inclusive Architectural Project Manager and Designer from the Institute of Human-Centered Design. I believe we also have Danielle. Yeah, Danielle, I thought Missy and someone else was going to be.
Yes, you
Oh,
can
Mary, yes.
see. Yep.
Okay. Missy, you rascal. Okay. So, Danielle, why don't you take it from the background and you can run with it from there.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm excited to bring this to you guys and to have everybody hear a little bit more detail about what's been going on. So a bit of background. In September of 2022, Westwood, in collaboration with the Commission on Disability, applied for a municipal planning grant from the Massachusetts Office on Disability, known as the MOD. And this municipal planning grant is used for one thing. And that one thing that it's used for, if you get it, is to fund an Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, self-evaluation and transition plan for the town. So I just want to say a quick thank you about that. So we wouldn't have been able to complete that application if it hadn't been for the former Commission on Disability chairs who were in place at the time, Ann Berry Goodfellow and Rania Kelly. Also, Tish Healy in the Town Administrator's Office, Nora Loughnane in Community and Economic Development, and also Select Board Member Mary Ann LeBlanc Cummings were all pivotal in terms of getting the information we needed for that application and getting it submitted. So in December of 2022, Westwood was awarded the municipal planning grant, and the select board voted to accept that grant funding and to have the town complete the self-evaluation and transition plan. Fast forward to March of 2023, and as dictated by the planning grant and in collaboration with the Commission on Disability, the town created an RFP and we put that project out to bid. That's a big thank you to Michelle Miller, our procurement officer, for guiding us and coordinating that process. And then through that process, we were able to hire an outside agency, the Institute for Human-Centered Design, which is who Megan is with, and she will be presenting on behalf of our community tonight. So the IHCD, or Institute for Human-Centered Design, took on the project, and they conducted that self-evaluation and transition plan. And they've just been amazing to work with. And I wanted to make sure to say that I hope everyone will take a look at their website and their information, because they're doing amazing work in so many communities around Massachusetts and beyond. So very cool to work with them. The IHCD utilized site visits as well as communication with the town's Commission on Disability and municipal officials to complete a full evaluation and draft summaries, site reports, and the transition plan that looked at all of our town buildings, our fields and playgrounds, anything that was under municipal control, as well as a few sites that were under school control, but the town's people use for polling, like the gym, or for town meeting, like the auditorium, and even Playhide Field, which has been used for outdoor meetings in the past. So between 2023 and 2024, all of that work was being done. The drafts of all of those evaluation reports were then shared with our department heads and other municipal leadership that has control of the buildings and that spends time in those buildings to make sure that the content was, accurate and up to date. So that big thanks there to Jim McCarthy, our facilities director, and Brendan Ryan, our assistant director of public works. They really led that part of things. Those documents were then shared with the Commission on Disability and discussed at their public meetings. So Mary Sethna, their current chair of the COD, and Missy O'Regan, current vice chair, really coordinated that along with myself and Janice Donovan, who's the staff liaison to the Commission on Disability, and great work was done there. So in November 2024, all of the information, all of the documents of the draft ADA self-evaluation and transition plan were posted on the town's website, and public comment was encouraged. And that stayed up, and public comment was open through January 21st of 2025. Janice Donovan and the town administrator's office pushed out information about that public comment period through the wire, through the town social media accounts, and then we were all, making sure at committees and local groups that we were talking about that. So after collecting public comment and comment from the Commission on Disability, we are here at this point, which is the public presentation that Megan will give, talking about the work that was done here in Westwood. And then in ending, I'll just say that following this presentation tonight, we've kind of wrapped up the self-evaluation and transition plan. The Commission on Disability will tell you about their support of the plan. And once we formally adopt it, the town is able to become eligible for municipal project grants through the Massachusetts Office on Disability, and those can be up to $250,000 for implementing accessibility improvements that were recommended in the transition plan. So that's a very brief overview. Thanks for bearing with me. And I'm going to turn it over now to Megan Dufresne and let her tell you more. Thanks, Joe, and thanks, Megan.
Thanks, Danielle. Well done. Megan, you can certainly begin.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I was going to share a brief PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, Tish.
Okay, so my name is Megan Dufresne. I work with the Institute for Human-Centered Design. I'm an architectural designer and project manager, and I've done a number of these ADA self-evaluation and transition plan reviews. A little bit about our organization. We're a 45-year-old international education and design nonprofit that is dedicated to enhancing the experiences of people of all ages, abilities, and cultures through excellence in design. We're located in the SOA district, of Boston, and we have a number of projects. One of which that's most relevant to this project is we run the New England ADA Center. And so I wanted to include the phone number here. This is a phone number you can call if anytime you have a question on accessibility within Massachusetts. They'll answer your questions on the ADA. I also wanted to point out this website that we put out on ADA Title II action guides. And so this gives guidance to entities like cities and towns who are going through the process that you recently went through. So if you want to read up on more information on that, it's adaactionguide.org. And so looking at the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title II requires that state and local government entities do not discriminate against people with disabilities in their programs, services, and activities. And for that reason, state and local governments must take steps to examine their programs and establish a plan for compliance with the law. I think as Danielle discussed, we looked at a number of things within the town, and including we looked at the programs, services, and activities that were provided. We looked at a number of facilities, and we looked at website accessibility. And ultimately, the ADA self-evaluation provides comprehensive data about the current state of compliance, and it identifies both issues that need corrective action as well as any gaps that we found within policies and procedures of the town. And so the basis of the self-evaluation, it's based on the 2010 ADA standards and 521 CMR, which is the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board regulations. So facilities that we found that were out of compliance at the date of construction or renovation are required to be brought up to these standards. And the two standards can be slightly different. So we do like to mention that. So when the codes differ, the element must comply with the more stringent code. And a few examples of where the codes differ include drinking fountains, toilet rooms, signage, etc. So our main goals for the self-evaluation and transition plan include ensuring that all the town's programs, services, and activities, when viewed in their entirety, are readily accessible to and usable by people with disabilities. There's the priority of ensuring program access with the main goal of equal participation of people with disabilities. And the transition plan in particular helps to provide an implementation strategy that can be integrated into town planning and budgeting. And ultimately, the main goal is that all residents, regardless of ability, feel that they know about and can participate fully in all the town of Westwood has to offer. So looking first at how we evaluated program services and activities, all of this information has been pretty much compiled in our Part B policies and procedures report. And we obtain this information by creating an online ADA questionnaire, and it was filled out and submitted by 16 departments around the town, which is an amazing, excellent response rate. compared to most towns. We also received extensive feedback from 5 members of the Commission on Disabilities, and this helped us not only with the policies and procedures report, but also with helping us focus in when we were surveying buildings on the Commission on Disabilities top concerns. We also looked to the town website and spoke with town employees. And so our findings with regard to program access, the town has met its obligation to designate a responsible employee by appointing Chris Coleman, the town administrator, as the town's ADA coordinator. Regarding grievance procedures, Westwood does have a grievance procedure for employees and members of the public. The main issue that we found was that 11 of the staff respondents were unaware that the town had this. And so we pretty much recommend, getting all the staff educated and on board of where to find this information. We found a similar thing with the notice of ADA requirements. We did find that some of the public meetings contained an ADA notice. However, staff respondents were unaware of this. And so this would be, educating staff in each department about the ADA notice. There was a comment from the Commission on Disability members who were interested in using more inclusive language within the notice, especially as related to recreation programs. Regarding reasonable modification of policies, practices, and procedures, it looks like a majority of departments have not developed written policies or procedures for modifications to public programs. Regarding employment and reasonable accommodation, the town does have an ADA statement in the personnel policies manual, including the provision of reasonable accommodation, and 10 out of 16 respondents indicated that their department has adopted these policies. Finally, with regard to effective communications, which includes providing auxiliary aids and services, there's no evidence that the town has failed to provide effective communications, but from the department responses, it does seem that clarifying procedures for providing effective communications could be beneficial. It can be a confusing, complicated topic, and we are willing to provide a training free of charge from one of the members of the New England ADA Center on this, if the town would like it. So as Danielle mentioned earlier, we looked at 8 municipal buildings, 4 public facilities that were located at Westwood High School, including outdoor sports areas and the pool and the recreation department and auditoriums. We also looked at 10 parks and recreation facilities. And so when we look at facilities, we have typically 3 strategies to ensure access to program services and activities. First, the town could choose to relocate the program to an accessible location within the current facility. They could choose to relocate the program to an accessible location at another facility, or they could renovate the facility in order to ensure access to programs. And just to describe the deliverables for each building or facility that we surveyed, we submitted a kind of a two-part report. The first part is a narrative overview of the facility where we describe basic background information such as dates of construction, renovation, information about entrances, exits, vertical circulation, layout, and functions. We then go into describing what we feel the key accessibility issues are for this facility. We give rough order of magnitude cost estimates, and then after these cost estimates, we go into recommendations that go beyond the ADA or the MAB that would be best practice or inclusive design recommendations for the facility. The second part of each facility report includes what we call a catalog, and this is a database of records of each building element that it doesn't comply with regard to either the ADA or MAB or both. And so each of these records will have a photograph. It will have information about where the photograph was taken. It will have a list of what the issue is, as well as any relevant measurements. And then for each item, we'll recommend a possible remedy and a rough order of magnitude cost estimate. And so the self-evaluation and transition plan is made up of a series of three narrative reports, including an executive summary, the Part B policies and procedures report, and a legal overview report. The second part of the submittal includes the transition plan spreadsheets. And so this is where we export all of the information that we had from the catalogs of the places we surveyed, and we give you an Excel sheet that can act as a living document. The town can, sort and order things in whatever way they want to. Oftentimes, if you're buying a bunch of doorknobs or signage, you might want to sort it that way. And in addition, this Excel spreadsheet with all of the issues also provides our priorities for each for fixing each issue, and we rank the issues pretty much on does the issue definitely limit program access, or is it a safety issue? That rises to the top. The second most important issues would have to do with signage and navigation. The third would be additional ADA compliance issues. And the fourth priority would be things that go beyond the ADA for inclusive design or best practice. And this sheet has kind of two sides to it. The first bunch of columns in blue is the information that we provide to you on each of the issues. The second, the last three columns that are highlighted in green are give you an area to track each renovation, to assign, a responsible party to each renovation, and also dates of when you plan to complete the renovation. And so looking at, I just chose a couple of examples. First, looking at Westwood Town Hall, of course, a very important building that is currently having a lot of issues with when it relates to accessibility. We did find, obviously, on the date of survey, there was no accessible route to the first and second floors, which are the floors the public accesses. The lift was inoperable, and even if it were to be repaired, it would be lacking the minimum amount of headroom clearance that's required in the standards. And so our ultimate recommendation, which would require, I think, further research and study, would be to provide a limited use, limited access elevator within the building that connects the entrance to the public floors. We also found some issues outside with the ramps that lead to the accessible, well, the entrance that was meant to be the accessible entrance. And then we found that throughout the building, signage was either missing or non-compliant, and this included directional sign, designation signs, which are signs with raised characters in Braille, which should be provided at all permanent rooms and spaces, and egress signs. The first image on the bottom left shows some service counters that are located higher than allowed, so that wheelchair users wouldn't be able to use them. With the toilet rooms, we felt that there should be an accessible toilet room on each level. So on the first floor, there was a single user toilet room and a multi-user women's. So we would recommend bringing the single user fully up to compliance. On the second floor, there's a men's room, both multi-user men's and a multi-user women's. We would recommend bringing the changing the multi-user women's into an accessible all-gender single-user toilet room. Also, throughout the facility, we did find non-compliant stair handrails, which are especially important in buildings that don't have any accessible means of access between the floors. And so this is just showing some of the typical issues that we found at recreation facilities around the town. Oftentimes we found that many facilities lacked accessible routes between main program areas or various areas of sport activity. The first image shows an overhead image of Downey Elementary School. The second image shows the playground at the community tot lot. The ADA, the lack of accessible route to and around the playground. This doesn't come so much from the ADA. The ADA would allow wood chips or engineered wood fiber to function as an accessible route. However, the MAB has additional, it's not very well publicized requirements where they don't consider wood chips to be an accessible route. They also require an accessible route around the playground so that, I guess parents can monitor their children as their children play. And so this was lacking the route around the playground. I think the third image on the top shows lack of an accessible sign. And so I think it's common that we find parking issues, and this kind of was a typical parking issue that we found at Lodge Soccer Field. Regarding portable toilets, many of the facilities did provide portable toilets. Wherever they're provided, at least 1 or 5% need to be accessible. And while these ones, like the one in the picture, look pretty large, looking to the MAB standards requires them to be a little bit larger than what's required under the ADA. They also need to be located on an accessible route, which, you know, it has to be firm, stable, and slip resistant and not be grass. So looking at the first image on the bottom left, we found that the gate to the batting cage at Morrison Park didn't have enough clear width to comply with the ADA and the MAB. And so under the ADA, all of the practice areas must be located on an accessible route. The center image on the bottom shows spectator seating area in Morrison Park. And it was found that there's lack of accessible spaces alongside bleachers. This is usually pretty easy to remedy, where you just need to have a firm, stable, and slip-resistant surface alongside the bleachers so that a person using a wheelchair or a wheeled mobility device is able to sit alongside, shoulder to shoulder, with somebody seated in the bleachers. There also needs to be an accessible route to the bleachers. The final image on the right-hand side at the bottom shows picnic tables. And so in a number of places, we found that picnic tables lacked an option of an accessible picnic table that had knee and toe clearance for a wheelchair user. In addition, these picnic tables, none of them were located on an accessible route. And so these are kind of the issues that we looked at while we were surveying. Looking to the website accessibility report, so the major gaps we found had to do mostly with issues that people who use screen readers have when they're, you know, going through websites. So these were a few of the main issues that we found. The carousel on the homepage needs to be made accessible. Some of the information is too repetitive for screen readers. Buttons such as calendars need to have certain labels in order for screen readers to be able to translate them. All of the image need alt text. I guess with the links, oftentimes they didn't have enough description in the link text for people using screen readers to be able to clearly navigate the website. All of the videos didn't have titles. At least one flyer was shown that had text within the image. And anytime you have text in an image, you'll have to convey that visual text to screen readers. Also, tables are another tricky thing with screen readers, and so they need all correct labels to them. And so I always like to show some of the things that you're doing right around town. We've had a very good positive experience working with Westwood, and So these are some of the things that we picked out as good examples that you could replicate around the town. First, the image is difficult to completely make out in the top left corner at Wentworth Hall, but this is something we usually don't see people get right. So this is an egress sign that has an international symbol of accessibility on it, and this is required under the MAB for new construction since 2006, and it really helps guide people with disabilities to the accessible exit. And so this was very good to see that you had done this sign, because it's not, we don't find it very often. The second image shows a hand dryer at Westwood High School, and this is a good example because oftentimes with hand dryers, they can be hazards to people who are blind and low vision, where they will act as protruding objects and bump into them. Where this is a low profile, it wouldn't cause injury. The third image on the right side shows a drinking fountain at the police station. And it's kind of a common occurrence when drinking fountains are provided in the middle of a corridor like this. They can also be a protruding object and a hazard for people who are blind or low vision. But on the higher drinking fountain that would act as a protruding object, you do provide a cane detectable barrier skirt underneath. And so that's good. Also, the bottle filler is located over the low drinking fountain. And so this is, required that the bottle filler be located, so that wheelchair users are able to access it. The image on the bottom left side shows a bench at the police station, and we always like to stress the importance of benches, as 10 times the number of people who use wheelchairs have difficulty walking. This is a good example that provides armrests and a back. It also provides space alongside the bench so that a wheelchair user would be able to sit shoulder to shoulder and talk with somebody on the bench. The final image shows an accessible stone dust route around Morrison Park. And so it could be an option for some of your parks that may lack accessible routes to bleachers or other areas. And so, thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
That was a terrific presentation, Megan. Very nice. I have a couple of questions. One is, when you're looking at the schools, were any of the students surveyed?
Actually, no, the students weren't surveyed. So with the schools, we looked at the outdoor areas, and it was strictly compliance. Looking.
I was looking at that threshold that's over 2 inches high, kind of jumps out at you. And I guess my question is for Chris and the others is, who's going to be in charge of implementing these changes?
Great question, Mr. Chair. So one of the things that is part of this work, and to also be eligible for a grant of up to $250,000 for implementation, this report has to be provided to the select board, has to be accepted by the select board. We would then look to apply for that grant and work. We have a team along with our facilities director, Jim McCarthy, to begin to work on strategized plans to improve ADA compliance.
this something
I'm
we
sorry.
should, is this something we should get an annual update on if we accept this plan?
It would be an annual update because it would be also be part, the idea would be part of the annual capital process as well. So we provide you an update when we provide you with the capital plan.
Okay.
I think I can add a little depth there too, Mr. Chair, which is that something I should have said in the beginning and can say now is that all this report with all of, Megan included some detail, but it's broad and that level of detail for all of the sites. And so that has already been given to the group that's conducting the town and school-wide facilities. It's already been shared, across all departments in the town and with town administration. So it gets worked in. It's a kind of a living document that gets worked into all of the capital planning and facilities work and, ongoing things that happen. And so I think that's what Chris is referring to. So this will become a part of everything, and people will be making sure that that happens on the town side.
So Danielle, if I may, or sorry, Joe, were you?
No, I was gonna call on you, Rob. You're good.
Okay, thank you. So sort of to dovetail on that question, and your answer, Danielle. So as Doran Whittier is doing the facility study, they have seen this entire document. And that is all part of what they're going to be providing to us in terms of the assessment of facilities. I will that also have, are there specific timeframes? Megan, thank you very much for the presentation. I got through the presentation in the packet that we had. I cannot say that I got through all 373 pages of your full report. So I guess my question is, are there specific timeframes for implementation? And then, Chris, as they are doing the facility study, my recollection is that there are thresholds that if we go beyond for curing, from a cost perspective, it would trigger sort of a much bigger spend. So I'm just trying to understand how this will work in context with the greater facility study.
No, you are correct. There is a threshold. It's over a 3-year period. We have spoken with Dawn Whittier regarding this threshold for all of our buildings. And they are looking at strategically certain buildings that are in the greatest risk from a facility standpoint or the greatest level of importance to from their recommendation that they will be making on that facility report. This is included in that. So as Danielle said, this was part of the prep work that was provided to Dawn Whittier, the documents and prior facility studies that the town has conducted. Dawn Whittier has done their own due diligence within their facility process, but this is something that will be factored into that. And there are some areas where Jimmy and his team have already taken steps for improvements. So I don't want you to think that this is something he's looked at and he's already started to make some improvements. He has some plans, but we wanted to make sure that this was accepted by the board before we go any further.
Sure. And I mean, or I guess the other part of that question though are there specific timeframes for us now that we are in receipt of this information to have to cure some of these situations? Because I don't know how that will necessarily merge with what the implementation or the actions that come out of the facility study are. So will that be part of the conversation when we receive that? But in terms of deadlines?
It is something that we will be speaking with Dawn Whittier about. There are some things that may be in the larger scale because of the dollar amounts or the improvements that would need to be made to the facility. But there are also some things that Jimmy can work on an annual basis. So that's something, and Jimmy has been working very closely with Dawn Whittier regarding the facility study. So that is something that will come out of that report.
Okay.
And Megan, I know that you do this in multiple communities. And so I think that there's, a general recommendation. I don't recall any specific deadline, but more of a general recommendation that action can be continuously taken on the transition plan. Is that correct?
Yes, so what the general recommendation is is getting things done, trying to get things done within 3 to 5 years. However, we haven't ever seen a town get in trouble or get sued when they have a transition plan in place. As long as you can prove that you're chipping away and, taking steps and that you have this plan, then you're usually in a pretty good state.
And just a question with respect to the website. I don't think anybody here was surprised to hear some of the things that are, issues with the website when it comes to the ADA piece of it. I've actually done something like this for my institution with the Carroll Center, so I know I'm pretty familiar with what the standards are. I guess my question is, when you've done this with other municipalities, there are web hosting providers that tend to provide those services specifically for municipalities. Is the provider that we are using, are we not using the most current version? Should we be looking at other providers? I guess that's one of the questions that I have as I was processing some of your comments with respect to the website.
I think that's a really good point. These are pretty common issues that we see with a lot of websites. And unfortunately, this isn't my expertise, but I could ask our web reviewer what she would recommend.
Great. All right, are there any questions in the audience, Tish, or anything?
Joe, may I make a couple of comments, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Marion. Yeah, I thought you had. I'm sorry.
No, no worries, no worries. First of all, Danielle, thank you very much for your presentation. Ms. Dufresne, thank you very much for your presentation and the work of IHCD on this. Danielle gave a good history of this project, but she left out the part that after Rania Kelly and Amberry Goodfellow identified this grant, that Danielle got the grant over the finish line and did a ton of work to make that happen. So thank you very much for that, Danielle. I think, this project and getting this grant and doing this work is such a great example of a proactive, collaborative project between staff and our resident volunteers on the COD to make this happen, to take a hard look at how can we be better as a town. It is completely consistent with our comprehensive plan, which expresses our shared values as a town with respect to safety, access, and inclusion. And it's about trying to allow all of our residents to fully participate and contribute in our community. So I'm thrilled that this work has been done. I mentioned Ann Berry Goodfellow, past chair of the COD. She was unable to be with us tonight, but I did speak with her about our meeting tonight. And of course, she was the chair of the COD for literally decades. She wanted me to mention a couple of things. Anne is always someone who has been very pragmatic and always focused on making progress, and this is certainly progress. She does point out that we have known about the issues at Town Hall for a long time, and she stresses that it is the welcome mat for our town, and so it is important to make improvements there. We want it to be accessible for folks. And also she points out that the senior center is an important place to make sure that we are accessible. Of course, many of the folks that are there are older. Some have concurrent disabilities, and I am supportive of that as well as a focus for our priorities. And lastly, I just want to briefly thank all the members of the COD who have worked hard on this. I want to recognize our current chair, Mary Sethna, Vice Chair, Missy O'Regan, our other members, Marianne Cardy, Michael Curtin, Stephanie Feingold, Victoria McCready's, Elizabeth Pullen, and of course, staff by the wonderful Janice Donovan. So thank you all for the work on this, and I look forward to hearing about our grant application and hopefully receiving that grant and getting to work on so many of these great ideas. Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. Tish, I don't see anything there.
No, no resident questions right now.
All right, this has been a great presentation. Thank you so much for a job well done. Marianne, would you like to make a motion?
I would.
One
One
second.
moment,
Oh.
Sorry.
Joe. I believe Mary
Oh,
might
I'm
have.
sorry, Mary. Yep. You might be on mute.
So, good evening, and thank you for the time that you've given, and thank you very much to Megan and Janice and Danielle, who have walked us through this thing since I took over, and I'm sure Missy has been very grateful as well, and as we've navigated it. But I'd like to let you know that on January 14th at our COD meeting, and after lots of feedback and several meetings, after we reviewed the report that you've been given, we gave feedback to Danielle and to Janice, who then passed it on to Megan, who made final changes in that. And we, as a commission, voted on it and voted to support it and adopt it and make it a living part of our website on the Commission of Disabilities. And we'd ask this evening that you, the Board of Selectmen, do the same by adopting and supporting this and making it part of the planning of the town going forward. And
Thank you, Mary.
I thank you for your time.
That was great. I think that's exactly what my fellow select board member, Marianne, was hoping to do.
Thank you, Mary. And on behalf of the select board, I move that we accept the Americans with Disabilities Act self-evaluation and transition plan and to utilize the plan as a future planning guide.
Second that motion.
Any discussion on the motion? Roll call. Marianne?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you, folks. Missy, Mary, Megan, Danielle, and Janice. Well done. Thank you very much. All right, next on our agenda is regionalization of dispatch. I think this is Jeff. Are you taking this, or is Brian taking this?
Thank you. Sorry, I was just trying to unmute there, a little technical difficulty. Brian is going to take this actually, but I'll be here to, provide any background or, join in wherever the board would like or wherever I'm needed.
Terrific. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Brian, you've got the show.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for having me here this evening. I'm excited to share with you a project that we've been working on, which is the regionalization of dispatch services. When I say we, I'm referring to myself, Chris, Molly, Chief Silva, Chief Lund, as well as support from many of the other town departments and really working through this project. Mr. Chair, is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes, you may. It's up to Tish. We can see that, Brian.
Everybody can see it, great. I think it's important to start with how we got here, how we got to where we are now, actually. In the fall of 2022, we requested funds from the select board to complete a radio infrastructure study. The purpose of this study was to review our entire radio system, infrastructure, and identify a cost of replacing the aging and sunsetting equipment, while increasing the radio coverage throughout town. The study was completed in 2023, and the cost was estimated to be roughly $4 million to replace and upgrade our aging radio infrastructure. After receiving this report, we had to brainstorm on how to obtain funding for a project of this size. Also, simultaneously, we were working on a separate project to identify funding to add an additional public safety telecommunicator, also known as a dispatcher, onto the overnight shift. One idea was to look at 911 regionalization due to the large amounts of grant opportunities that are available. I made contact with the Massachusetts State 911 Department, and they offered to fund a regionalization feasibility study with the town of Westwood being the host community. What this means is Westwood would continue to provide dispatch services to the town. We would just be dispatching for an additional community. This study was completed in the summer of 2024, and ultimately it showed that it would be feasible for Westwood to regionalize, and the town of choice would be Dover, which is right next to us. Through this presentation, the areas of discussion that we're going to talk about is the project intent, our staffing, some technology and radio infrastructure concerns, the communications reconfiguration, some financial information, benefits timeline, and then at the end, some time for questions. Great. So to begin, the project intent, as I mentioned, was to increase staffing to a minimum of 2 telecommunicators, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The second intent was to replace aging technology and infrastructure, especially our radio infrastructure. Both of these objectives, we believe, can be achieved through regionalization of dispatch services between the town of Dover and the town of Westwood. So let me just explain our staffing. We have 1 telecommunicator on from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., we have 2 telecommunicators, and 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., we have 2 telecommunicators. The National Fire Protection Association standard says that there shall be a minimum of 2 qualified telecommunicators on duty and present in the communications center at all times. The second part of that says, when requested by the incident commander, a telecommunicator shall be dedicated to the incident and relieved of other duties within the communications center. We can achieve this on the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift, the 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift, but unfortunately we can't achieve this on the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. So this is a concern that we have, and is why we were looking to add a second person to the midnight shift. Having 1 telecommunicator on for 8 hours is not the really best way to do it. Some people like working alone, and speaking from experience, it is kind of nice, I'm not gonna lie. But also speaking from experience, it is not nice when you get bombarded with multiple 911 calls at the same time, whether it be to a motor vehicle accident or a house fire, or when you take that difficult 911 call of a baby not breathing, or an elderly woman who says her husband of 50 years has passed away, and you remain on the phone consoling her until the responders arrive. Not being able to have that second person to talk to, or having the ability to step away from the desk, takes a toll on your mental health. Emergency communications, 1 telecommunicator on a shift to handle all the police and fire emergencies, whether small or big, and sometimes both at the same time, is hard for anybody to do. We also don't have immediate mutual aid, such as what is available for the police and fire departments. For us, we have to send out a page to our staff that are not on duty, and then wait for a response and have somebody come in. That can take upwards of 30 minutes for a second person to come in and help you out with the current emergency that you're dealing with. Right now, we're going to talk about radio coverage. So what you're looking at here is the map shows our current radio coverage. The map on the left shows when dispatch is calling an officer on their portable radio. So this is dispatch to the officer in the field on their portable. If you see yellow, it means that the officer can hear dispatch from within a building. If you see blue, that means the officer can hear dispatch from the street. And if you see white, that means your officer has minimal ability to hear dispatch. So I think it's important, if you notice the blue sections, that's mainly in the Islington section along Washington Street as well as Route 1. And then over here on the white section is mostly down by University Avenue. The map to the right shows portable to dispatch, and that's when the officer in the field is contacting dispatch. Again, the yellow shows what works from within the building, calling from the officer's portable to dispatch. The blue shows what works from just the street, calling into dispatch. And the white shows minimal coverage, calling from the officer's portable into dispatch. Again, we're in the Islington section of town with the white, as well as University Avenue. With the radio infrastructure study that we had completed and upgrades to our current radio system with the latest technology, you see a vast difference. So this is the proposed coverage once we do some of our infrastructure fixes and replacements. Right, you'll see that on the left, dispatch to portable, that's dispatch to the officer in the field. We have almost full coverage inside residential buildings. That means that if an officer is inside a residential building, they'll be able to hear dispatch calling. That also means that the blue is covered as well, because if they can hear in the building, they can hear outside of the building. You'll see almost no white on the map. If you look to the map to the right, portable to dispatch, again, the officer in the field calling into dispatch, you see that with the proposed coverage, a vast majority of the town is yellow, with very few areas in blue. A minimal amount of blue being shown, but we are within the 95% standard of radio coverage that is required. Due to building materials and topography, it is almost impossible to get 100% radio coverage throughout the town. Here we have our technology replacement. Our current radio equipment is anywhere from 15 to 25 years old. Most of it is sunsetting, which means that the equipment can't be replaced anymore. We're basically borrowing parts from old equipment that other towns have basically replaced, and that the radio vendor has just sitting in an attic somewhere. So we're borrowing parts. Radio consoles are past end of life, which means they're no longer supported. Again, hard to get parts to fix them. The outdoor radio equipment, as you see pictured here, is not protected from the elements. We have vents at the bottom of the cabinet here. When it snows, the snow melts, it goes up inside the vents. There's no HVAC within this cabinet, so it's not protected from heat or from the cold. And then the pipes here that go into the ground that run up along the water tank on Fox Hill Street. You can see the styrofoam lining here is starting to erode. Water starting to go into the pipes, which is also not good for the wiring that goes into the pipes and up the water tank. Also, we want to add fiber to all of our radio sites for increased redundancy. Currently, we use microwave links, so it's a dish to dish, which works. However, if a tower were to fall, or if a tree, grows and starts to block the link, we lose the connection that we need. So we're looking to add fiber, which would run here from the police station up to Fox Hill Street, and it just increases the redundancy between the systems. There is a grant that's out for that currently, which is something that we're also working on aside from this grant. Also, we're looking to add a police and fire separate channel, an operations channel. Currently, we have one police channel and one fire channel. And if we have multiple incidents going on, there's no way to move an incident onto another channel, an operations channel, to free up the original channel. So a good explanation of that would be if we have a fire in town and the fire departments, working that fire, they need to be on that one channel. And If we have out-of-town units coming into town as mutual aid, they need their own separate channel to handle any other calls that come in. Currently, we only have one channel, so we're looking to add a channel for both police and fire. We have obtained the frequencies for those, but we do need the equipment to make them operate. So we have the channels, we just need the equipment to make them operate. And lastly, we're looking to establish a multi-year radio preventative maintenance plan. So we don't run into these issues as they come up. This will help extend the life of the radio equipment. The current Westwood dispatch layout, town administrator is the appointing authority. Funding falls under the police department budget. Chief of police has direct authority over dispatch services, and the communications director oversees department operations. With the regional dispatch governance, the town of Westwood is the host community. Westwood is responsible for administration of dispatch services for both communities. Dover is responsible for paying an assessment to the town of Westwood yearly for dispatch services. Town administrator remains the appointing authority. The public safety communications becomes a separate department within town government. And the operations committee, comprised of both communities' chiefs, provide input and guidance to the operations of the center with policies, procedures, overall operations. Financial information. So Massachusetts State 911 Department, they have a regional development grant, which is what we're looking to apply to. The grant provides opportunity for equipment upgrades to facilitate regionalization. This includes radios, infrastructure, computers, and other technology. The grant also provides an opportunity for salary reimbursement that would include the director position, deputy director, any administrative or specialty staff. So that's a huge cost. I don't want to say savings, but it's a huge cost deference. Massachusetts State 911 also offers the support and incentive grant. Currently, we receive $54,544 from State 911 every year. With taking on Dover and becoming a regional, that bumps up to approximately $400,000 a year. That's a huge increase. Again, this is all subject to State 911 yearly statistical recalculation. That's why I can't give an exact number, but it's in that ballpark. And lastly, the town of Dover pays an assessment to the town of Westwood. This is equal to their portion of regional communication center costs. So Dover would be assisting with the costs of the communication center. Benefits of regionalization, resources and surge staffing. This increases our staffing levels when we have storms, those sudden storms that come in, we can plan for events. We just have a larger staffing capability. Cost avoidance and effectiveness of the center. Improved mutual aid coordination between the town of Westwood and the town of Dover. Currently, as you know, we do a lot of mutual aid with them. They come to us on occasion. By having dispatch services in one center for both communities, it improves that relationship. We have enhanced interoperability with communications, being able to link to the town of Dover, being able to operate in their community as well as them in our community. We get to standardize policies and procedures. We get to offer additional professional development to our center staff. We have more career advancement opportunities for our staff. Like I said, equipment upgrades, support from the State 911 department, and an increase in State 911 grant opportunities as well. Timeline is we've been working on this, I want to say before September 2024, but the grant itself, September 2024. March 6th is when the grant is due. July 1st is when grant award letters would be sent out by State 911 department. And July 1st to June 30th, infrastructure purchase and implementation. And then if we were to go through the project, July 1st, 2026 is when the anticipated go live date would be for the Regional Communications Center. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Nice presentation, Brian. Well
Thank you.
done. Mary Ann, would you like to start?
Yes, sorry. Thank you very much, Brian. Really appreciate that. I should mention that it's my understanding that each of the members of the select board previously had an individual presentation made by you on this subject, along with Chief Silva, Chief Lund, and other town employees. And I very much appreciate that presentation that we received. And clearly, we have an issue with respect to our communications. And I think the maps that you put up were very helpful in demonstrating that. And, actually, I'd perhaps like to hear from Chief Silva, as to his view of this as the chief of police, and what you think the needs are and how this might address it, this grant program.
Sure, thank you. So like with any state grant, right, there are more questions to be answered, and we're still working on the application. We would need to see if we got it in the first place and how much we would be granted. But in terms of the potential that this represents, we have, and we've had for some time, a serious communications issue. As you notice, or as you may recall from the maps, the upper side of town, or the Westwood side of town, where once upon a time was where the call volume was, the coverage, while not great, is okay. But for the last many years, as the town has grown, particularly in the University Ave section of town, we're now there the majority of the time. And when you see coverage that Brian talked about, that an officer, a police officer, or a firefighter from their portable radios sometimes can't hear dispatch and almost always can't communicate back to dispatch, that's a significant safety issue. You can't tell dispatch what's going on real time to send you resources. You can't, the other police officers or firefighters can't hear you, so they don't know what to bring or how to respond or otherwise. So it's a serious issue that's going to need to be addressed. For people that have listened in on a scanner, they may have heard, can you call on your cell phone? That's okay when we have the luxury of time at the police or the fire department to make a call over the cell phone to request information, but operationally that's also dangerous, right? Just for a point of information, the reason why we use radios are not only to communicate back and forth with the dispatcher, but so that our fellow firefighters and police officers can hear what's going on too. And so when you make a phone call back to dispatch, the other firefighters or police officers don't hear you. So it's a significant problem. It's not just a Westwood problem. It happens in communities throughout the Commonwealth, and this is one of the ways that we're trying to creatively address that. Really embracing our fiduciary obligation to the residents and exhausting any and all opportunities to reach out there for community compact and grant funding opportunities, so that we can provide better and safer service for them and for the firefighters and the police officers.
Thank you, Chief. And I see that Chief Lund is with us as well. Chief, I wanted to give you a chance to weigh in, if you would, please, on this.
Yeah, I think this has been an issue for a long time. Like he said, using the cell phones, we oftentimes will go to buildings and we have to leave someone outside, and we'll use one channel to relay to them, and then they relate to dispatch. So you're playing, telephone, firefighter. And it's not a great situation at all. It makes for a very dangerous situation. So this is a way to get us moving in the right direction, and I am 100% behind it.
Thank you. I'll yield the floor, Joe.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. Rob, you're up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and Brian, thank you for your presentation and for both Chief Silva and Chief Lund being here for this conversation. So, obviously tremendous improvement in radio coverage and operational safety for both the men and women of your departments, as well as for residents in need of service, right? So I guess one of the questions that I have is, Brian, if I remember your slide correctly, there's that one shift where we've only got one dispatcher now. And obviously this would get us to that second dispatch 24/7, 365. Do we have a sense of the incremental volume that would be picked up? And is there incremental staffing as we absorb the Dover dispatch that, we have that 2 is the appropriate number, or is there, did I miss, is there a different number that would be on 24/7, 365?
Great question. Planning out this process, we were actually looking at having 3 telecommunicators on from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and 3 telecommunicators on from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. and then keeping the 2 on the midnight shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Looking at call volumes, we thought this would be the most appropriate shift coverage to make the dispatch center work appropriately and safely.
Great, thank you very much. No additional questions. I mean, I think this is an urgent need, obviously, for the community, so.
Can I speak to that model as well? Currently, if there's a fire during the day, if you could take one of those 3 and have them dedicated just to that incident, increases situation awareness, increases safety, increases everything else. So that's an added benefit to this.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Brian, help me out. I know some of these centers have dedicated dispatchers and dedicated call takers, which I've been told is a huge, huge step in the right direction. Will this be similar to that? So someone will be answering the phone and not trying to dispatch something to a cruiser?
Correct. We kind of use that model right now with the 2 dispatchers, where one person will pick up a 911 call. The second person silent monitors, so they're listening to the 911 call, they're getting the information, and then they're dispatching that call out while they're listening to the call taker take in the information. So we do use that now, and we will continue to use that. We also have the ability to silent monitor our business line calls, so we can do the same thing. If a call comes in on the business line, we can silent monitor, one person ask the questions, the other person is relaying the information out. We find it to be the most efficient way to dispatch the calls for service.
That's great. In the hospital, we call it 2 sets of eyes. You're using 2 sets of ears, so that redundancy is a huge step in the right
Absolutely.
direction. And Jeff, Jeff, I can't tell you how many times I was personally frustrated in trying to make a radio call on University Ave. Just forget about it. I find it very, very scary at times. So I'm certainly concerned about the firefighters and the police officers down in that area. I think this is a great, great opportunity for us. And Brian, thanks for all your hard work on that. And with that being said, Mary Ann, Rob, anything else? Chris, do you have anything you want to contribute to this?
No, Mr. Chair, I think Brian did a great job. I want to thank him and the 2 chiefs for their leadership and all the work that they've done, and certainly for the select board for their support in funding the studies for the public safety radio infrastructure. So thank you. And Mr. Chair, I do believe you have a question.
Great, thanks.
Q&A.
So real quick, before we go to the question from
Yep.
the Q&A,
Yep.
is there follow-up or anything that we need to be doing formally with our sister community in Dover to sort of move this forward?
Yes, with your continued support, we will have ongoing conversations with Dover. The plan would be to come back to your February 24th meeting with a recommendation to see if the board would support us submitting the application by that March 6th deadline.
And that, Chris, would be in the form of an intermunicipal agreement?
We would need an IMA or an intermunicipal agreement as part of that. We don't need it for the application, but it certainly does help.
Thank you.
All right, I think I can read this, Tish. We have two questions from Kate Nee, 10 Cedar Hill Drive. Didn't the planning board just approve an additional cell tower in the University Station area that would improve this situation? Was that benefit included in the 2024 study? Jeff or Steve, do you folks know anything about that additional cell tower? Was that?
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer that if you'd like.
Oh, thanks, Chris.
Yeah. So as part of this project, one of the things that we have an internal group that's led by Nora Lockney for our permitting team. And we presented this to that team. And as part of that, it was identified that we would need an amendment to the wireless locations. So that was put forth to the planning board, and with their support at last year's town meeting, we did have an amendment to that to add those additional locations and uses.
And
So
that will,
thank you.
that will benefit the police and fire radio systems.
Yes, that was part of the, when we presented this to our internal permitting team, this was one of the things that they discussed. And then with the planning board support and the warrant article that they put forth and town meeting support of that article, we have those locations now for this.
Okay, and I have two more here. Kate Nee again, I support the feasibility study. Thank you, Kate. And then we have one from Kathy Wallace, 283 Farm Lane. A comment was made tonight that we provide more and aid to Dover than we receive. Can we seek some remedy through this agreement to compensate Westwood for the discrepancy in mutual aid for fire and ambulance? And Chris, you were so quick to hop on the last one. Do you want to take a shot at this one?
So this is a municipal, this agreement is for regional dispatch. I completely understand what Ms. Wallace is saying, and this is something that the chiefs and I will continue to have conversations with Dover. We are looking to get Dover support for this regional dispatch, and the matter that Ms. Wallace raised is a real one, and it's something that we will continue to have conversations with Dover about. But we would be receiving some compensation in the form of an assessment from Dover for this regional work.
Thank you, Chris. Rob, Mary Ann, anything else from your end?
None for me, Joe.
Okay.
No, I'm in
Brian,
support.
Brian, anything else? You did a great job. I'm not trying to pressure you.
Thank you, Mr.
Done
Chair.
good. Okay. The chiefs, do you gentlemen have anything to say?
No, sir.
Closing? And I don't see, I take it back. This is Fran Fusco, 20 Pine Lane. Who will pay the salary and the benefits of the dispatcher? How does that work, Chris?
So that will be part of the assessment. Westwood is already paying the salaries and benefits for the dispatchers, but the cost sharing would come from Dover as far as their assessment.
And Jeff, this comes out of the police budget?
It does, yeah. Dispatches comes under the police department budget. So when you see our budget line item, or for the residents, when they look at the budget book and they look at staffing, within that staffing number and the cost associated with it includes the dispatch staff that we have.
Okay, Rob?
Correct me if I'm wrong, did I hear in Brian's presentation though that that would become a different department within the overall structure of the town? So I'm guessing that would mean it would be like a clearly identifiable sort of both cost center and inflow?
I'll take that if that's.
Sure, yeah.
Yes, that's the intent. We're still, working out, some language and some things on, what would that look like, right? We have a few different, versions of that in town now, with facilities coming under DPW or COA coming under Danielle, so forth, or for Health and Human Services. But yes, it would be clearly identifiable. There'd be a clear delineation with the dispatch staff and the money that it takes to run the dispatch center, notwithstanding how it's structured.
So it would come out from under your cost center.
Correct.
Sounds good.
I mean, they'd still be in the building.
I get it.
Yeah,
I
you
get
know,
it.
so it would largely, you know, to the residents, you know, would really feel the same. I mean, that's an important component about this, if this does happen, right? And, you know, with the state, you know, as we know, with it's, you know, it's kind of never over until it's over, and there's more work to be done. So we can, you know, find out all the details. But, you know, to the resident, it'll feel the same, right? It'll be our same employees, it'll be the same dispatch center, it'll be the same delivery of service. And that was important to us, right? Because we didn't want to take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back when we even started to look into this. And so they'll still remain in the same location, in the same building. Residents will access it the same way via the telephone or coming into the lobby. It's just an opportunity for some enhancements that are sorely needed, and the potential, at least if everything goes favorably, to get the state to fund it instead of the town funding it.
I would just add those enhancements are long overdue. I don't see any questions. No hands up. Mary Ann, would you like to make a proposal?
I would, Joe. Thank you. And before I do that, I just again want to thank you, Brian, Chief Silva, Chief Lund, for the presentation tonight, but also, and more importantly, perhaps all the work that went into bringing this proposal to us, being so proactive in seeking out these state funds to further invest in public safety without placing a burden on Westwood residents in doing it. So thank you very much for all the work. I know this has been a very large project to get us to this moment. So with that, I move that the Select Board support the regionalization of dispatch services between the town of Westwood and the town of Dover, and for review of the intermunicipal agreement at the February 24, 2025 Select Board meeting.
Second that motion.
Any discussion on the motion? Roll call. Mary Ann?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Unanimous decision. Thank you all very much. Brian, nice job.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Stephanie, you're back. It's great to see you. Would you like to
Thank you.
begin?
Sure. So tonight I'm here with an update on the FY26 budget. So the development process for this budget started in early November. The municipal departments were asked to submit their initial budget request. Those were then reviewed. At the same time, we began initial projections on revenues, overall expenses, including fixed costs. Then as the process progressed, we received more information on outside assessments, revenue sources that were received. All this information comes together, is reviewed internally and at budget steering meetings, which have been a great success this year, then presented to the board. So from that, a proposed municipal budget book and an overall expenditure and revenue budget is developed. So that's what I will be reviewing and walking through tonight, the proposed municipal budget as well as the overall budget. And the key highlight to come away with tonight is that that overall budget that is being proposed is balanced at this time. So if I could, I'm just going to share my screen and bring up a presentation. Okay, you can see that. And just sort of for a minute, because it's going to be sort of the focus of the night, the municipal budget, before I get into the details and numbers, I just want to remind everyone that the municipal budget encompasses a wide range of services provided to the Westwood community. So in providing that high level of services to members of the community, the town continues to demonstrate the close collaboration that occurs between all our departments. The largest area of this budget are public safety and public works, DPW. Together, they comprise 67% of the town's budget. For many residents, these departments are the public face of municipal government. They provide many services, including community programs, police, fire, advanced life support, ambulance services. The DPW provides weekly trash removal, plowing, upkeep of streets and roadways, maintenance of all of our playing fields and municipal buildings in town. In addition to these major departments, the budget covers several other areas providing services. Programs offered by the library, the Council on Aging, various recreation departments. Many residents participate in these programs on a regular basis, considering them a major part of the quality of life in Westwood. So the municipal budget is also charged with touching many aspects of daily health, safety, well-being, of our Westwood residents of all ages. Each year, we strive to provide services in an efficient way in order to minimize increases in taxes and still maintain the excellence that is expected here in town. So just the municipal budget in particular this year is a proposed increase of approximately 4.9%, which I'll get into more details on. The budget strives to maintain the current level of quality services provided by all municipal departments, and the change in the budget over the prior year is primarily driven by contract obligations in salary accounts, including new wage scales for non-represented employees as well as public safety groups. So I'm just gonna get into now, I'll start off with sort of, so go to the next slide.
Mr. Chair, would you mind if I said a few words before Stephanie gets into her presentation?
Of course not.
Thank you. Just because we're talking about salaries, I wanted to take the opportunity to provide some additional context surrounding this year's municipal budget proposal. As each of you have asked questions directly to Chris, Stephanie, and I over the last few weeks. So as Stephanie said, the proposed increase in the base municipal budget is 4.9%. And as you've heard in previous budget presentations, 83% of the municipal budget is allocated for salaries for the people who deliver our essential services. Municipal compensation is different than most private sector compensation, and I just wanted to take a moment to talk about how municipal salaries increase year over year. So different groups of employees have different wage tables. Police have one, fire has one, DPW has one, non-represented employees have one, and each table includes a series of steps. If an employee is not at the top of their salary range or pay range, each year they increase by one step. Additionally, each year, this wage table is increased by a base wage adjustment, sometimes called a cost of living adjustment or a COLA. Most people focus on the base wage adjustment number because those percentages feel similar to the annual merit increases received in the private sector. The structure of the wage table and the base wage adjustment number for represented groups like police and fire are bargained every 3 years. The base wage adjustment for non-represented employees is set by the select board as part of the annual budget process. The structure of the wage table for non-represented employees, as I've mentioned before, has not been reviewed in 15 years. Each year, we present a budget that is forecasted at a point in time. We set the budget for July 1st to June 30th based on the information we have the prior January. Managing this budget is not a static exercise. It's highly dynamic. It ebbs and flows throughout the year as different people resign, retire, get promoted, or take on additional responsibilities that carry additional compensation. Most of the time, this goes without notice. Year to year, individual personnel variances are just part of a department's overall bottom line budget. However, there are individual positions in a budget that can stand out and then lead to questions. I want to reiterate that this happens every year and is a normal part of the budget process. Stephanie often refers to them as mid-year adjustments in her financial presentations. Chris, Stephanie, and I are all on this meeting, so I feel comfortable talking about some of the recent examples from our departments. In HR, in FY23, the HR department was completely restructured, moving from an HR director, a benefits coordinator, and several part-time HR administrators to an assistant town administrator, HR director, and 2 full-time HR generalists. The town administrator budget saw percentage increases in FY24 as we moved part-time positions to full-time and assigned additional responsibility to staff, the growing number of the town's boards and committees. The accounting and procurement offices have seen fluctuations as hours need to be added for large projects like the Pine Hill School. As Stephanie touched on, this year there are 3 new wage tables going into effect as part of previously established collective bargaining agreements with public safety, as well as non-represented employees. The impact of implementing new wage tables comes with a cost. The new wage table for the 34 police officer costs approximately $189,000. The new wage table for the 44 firefighters costs approximately $260,000. And the new wage table for the 116 employees covered by the classification and compensation study cost approximately $285,000. As I said, we managed this highly dynamic set of conditions to a total increase for the municipal budget that this year is 4.9%. Stephanie is going to show in her presentation that this is very much in line with the FY24 and FY25 overall municipal budgets. At this point, I'm going to turn it back to Stephanie, and she and I, I'm sure, will be happy to answer any specific questions that the three of you have in regards to the balanced budget.
Thank you, Muller, for that. Is it okay if I move on, Mr. Chair?
Sure, please do.
Great. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
I think you should just continue the presentation, Molly. Just take it away. So for tonight, I'll be starting off with sort of a status of where we are on the budgets. And then I'm going to go into any updates I have for you since your last meeting where I presented the budget, and then go into the municipal details and then the overall budget details. So the status right now, electronic copies of the proposed FY26 municipal budget book have been submitted to the Select Board for review. This includes information presented at your January 22nd meeting and then updates I'll present tonight. Hard copies of that will be distributed later this week once the board, hopefully tonight, approves this proposed budget and we move forward with it. And then electronic copies will also be posted to the town's website. We're currently finalizing what we call sort of the second piece of this, which is the proposed FY26 overall budget book. That will include all information presented at the 22nd meeting, and again, as well as updates presented tonight. I will be presenting the overall budget to FinCom at their February 12th meeting. And the budget, which is the big highlight to take away tonight, is currently balanced, and I will walk through the steps of how we got there. So I talk about this often, but the budget contains outside assessments. These are things that come to us. We have no control over them. Estimates are included up until those final numbers are provided from those outside agencies, at which the time the budget is adjusted. So two big pieces of those are the Blue Hills Regional School Assessment. We don't have an update yet. I have been in communication with them. We should have an updated assessment number by the end of February. So the current FY26 projected budget for that is about $130,000, a 10% increase over FY25. The key factor in that is in student enrollment. It depends on how many students attend. They do have a meeting, their school committee meeting, the Blue Hills District School Committee meeting will be on February 25th. So I'm hoping right after that to have a more updated number for you at that time. And it will be included in the total school budget. The sewer department MWRA assessment, no update yet. Should have a preliminary assessment on that by the end of February as well. Currently budgeting for about 3.5 million in the FY26 budget, and 2.5% increase over 25. The sewer budget revenue will be adjusted in the final budget. However, it has no overall impact since that department has a dedicated revenue source. Another big update tonight. Not a big update, unfortunately, but the FY26 health insurance budget update is that I have no information yet from the GIC on final rates. That is normal this time of year. They usually vote their final rates. It's usually early March. I've heard this year that they have a February 27th meeting. So hopefully they'll vote the final rates at that, and I'll be able to update the budget as soon as I receive those. Currently, it's at 9.18 million, a 10% increase over FY25. It's an estimate only, but that is based on numbers we've received from the GIC and as they have their meetings and sort of give out what they're projecting for the year. And we'll update the fixed cost budget to reflect those new numbers once received. So FY26 preliminary state aid revenue. So this is a good piece of update and some information I do have to share with you tonight from the governor's budget. So state aid currently is approximately 6% of our total FY26 revenue budget. So it's a pretty significant piece of that budget. The governor's FY26 proposed budget was released January 24th. And we had been estimating originally when I started this process for you and was projecting out revenue sources as level funded. We are now incorporating all updates that we received, and that goes towards helping balance that FY26 budget. So sort of the main takeaway here, and I can go through the details, but that the net change to revenue is about $195,000. So Included in the state aid budget is chapter 70. That's, you can think of that as the school aid, and then the municipal unrestricted government aid piece of it. So you can see the changes for each of those pieces from FY25 to this preliminary FY26 budget. About 2.9 on the chapter 70 side and 2.2 on the municipal side. So overall, that change is about $235,000. On the state charges side, so that's sort of the expense piece of this, it's the assessment charges that we get given from this budget. That's 41,000. That subtracts out to that overall net revenue increase of $195,000. Does anyone have any questions on that? I know that was a lot of information right there, so I'm happy to answer. Pause for a minute and
Happy to take the additional revenue net change, but can't help but notice that, you know, the state charges are going up much faster than the actual additional revenue as a percentage.
and it's higher than it's been the last couple of years. I was disappointed myself at that. So, and I will highlight too, this is the first round of this. So this is the governor's budget. It has to go through the legislative process. So there could be increases as we go along, and I'll update the board as soon as that happens.
Steph, is there anything in that is potentially at risk from a federal underwriting standpoint? I mean, I you know, as you say, 6%, that's a pretty hefty piece of our pie. I'm curious to know, are we worried about anything that is federally underwritten?
Not that I know of. What I can say confidently is, at least in the going back years, Westwood has never seen a cut in state aid, especially after the governor's budget comes out. So I don't see it as being a risk, but I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, I guess, and the other thing is, this is we probably, relative to other communities, rely less on state aid. So in times of
That is true. We are heavily reliant on property taxes, exactly. So while it is a piece of our pie, it's definitely not as large as some, say, cities in Massachusetts and things like that. Yep. So at your January 26th select board meeting, I included a note that we had a $1.5 million budget gap, which has been sort of developing since, like I said, we've been starting this since November, going along between the proposed expenditures and what was being projected at that time with revenue. And you can just see there the difference between those two numbers. The update tonight is that that is balanced. We have, as you can see, brought down the expenditure side to 129.7 million, and then also increased our revenues, projections, actuals up to the 1.9.7 as well. And I've said this already, but the proposed municipal budget increase is 4.9%. So here are a few bullets, as I call them, steps taken to get to that balanced budget. There's sort of a lot of detail behind each of these, and I will go through each one if you let me to explain, and then also take questions as I go along. So feel free to interrupt me if you have any specific questions. So as the municipal budget initial requests came in from departments, we review them, you know, cuts are made, we look at that. At this point, we've done a few further reductions to expense budgets. A huge piece of that is really focused in the fixed cost side. So at your last meeting, we had brought up the $55,000 for the townwide newsletter. It was the direction of the board that we should take that out. So that has been included in that $140,000. We also looked at a few of the fixed costs that I'll go into a little bit of detail on. An example is Medicare Part B. This is a program that has a fixed amount of people in it. I looked at the actuals from the last couple of years and brought that budget down. So it's cut from FY25, cut that budget down pretty significantly to sort of be in line with what I'm projecting what the actuals will be in FY26. And then also the townwide hardware software budget. We had increased that to be in line with what we're projecting out for potential and in some cases definite increases to software programs. I cut that back down a bit. And then we also looked at such things as we usually do an overall increase of about 5% to certain fixed costs such as payroll tax, things like that. We brought that back down to be more like a 1 or 2% increase over FY25. So overall, those add up to that $140,000 of reduced expense budget. My recommendation is that we also fully fund the select board reserve account with free cash. So if you remember, last year as part of the budget, that the select board reserves a total of $355,000. $155,000 of that was funded in the FY25 budget with free cash. I'm just recommending we fund that entire $355,000 with free cash. So it would be an additional increase of $200,000 on the free cash side. This brings it more in line with what was done a number of years ago to the FinCom Reserve Fund. This was actually something that the FinCom themselves suggested as funding their account instead of with taxation with free cash. So we're not artificially say those, those accounts don't always get used. They actually often are turning back funds. So instead of artificially inflating the free cash amount, just funding up front with free cash, since these are not, we're not funding salaries with these are reserve accounts that are not often used and only used to do things such as year-end closeout and things like that. I'm also recommending, I also reduced the fixed cost budget to include an updated pension number. So I've been presenting to you for a couple of months now that the Norfolk County Retirement Board was late with their pension number. We got the final letter from PARAC describing exactly what our appropriation is for FY26. And the number that had originally been presented was about 7.3 million. If they are offering in the letter, which they do, this is a usual occurrence, but I couldn't say it until we actually got that letter from PARAC, that if we do this payment, the assessment payment at the beginning of the year in a lump sum payment, there is a reduced amount. So that amount dropped down from 7.3 million to 7.17 million. So it's a reduction to the fixed cost budget of $130,000. I'm then also recommending that we increase the local receipts revenue projection amount by $500,000.
Just before you go to the local receipt piece.
Yeah, sure.
So totally get the payment, the early payment and the discount, I guess, that we get for that early payment. At the very first thing that you mentioned when you were talking about the steps, you also said that you had looked at pension and what it had been sort of in years past, and you brought it in line with that. That's separate and apart from this, correct?
No, sorry. I apologize if I said pension. I meant Medicare Part B. Is that? And then
I may have misheard, honest to God. So my bad.
on my first bullet here, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. And so I guess the question I have is there any risk associated with that move in terms of, I assume that is related to retirees in the program, right? So is there any risk associated with making that move?
Stephanie, could I jump in for that one?
Oh, please do. Yes.
So the Medicare Part B payment, this was implemented back in 2014 when the town switched to the Group Insurance Commission. Prior to that, retirees could be on a number of different health insurance plans, and the Group Insurance Commission requires that all retirees over age 65 who are eligible go onto a Medicare plan, which they did in 2014. However, if a retiree had been eligible for Medicare Part B but had not enrolled, was subject to a penalty for non-enrolling. And the town, because the town is now saying we're requiring you to do that, took on that Medicare Part B penalty. And so that's the number that Stephanie has been referring to. So it's just been a static number year after year. She looked at the actuals and reduced it to match the actuals. So there should be no more increases as retirees turn 65. We put them right into the Medicare Part B pipeline, and there are no penalties.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Thank you, Molly. Really appreciate that. So do you have any, sorry, Rob, so we'll move on to the local receipts if that's okay. That in the recommended increase of $500,000 would now bring that revenue projection amount, the amount that we would put in the revenue budget, to just over 5 million. So it's $5,080,000. And I thought it was important to list out the last 6 years of actuals. So when we say local receipts revenue projection, that means I'm estimating that we're going to get in actual revenue of $5 million for local receipts. That includes the biggest piece is motor vehicle excise tax. There's also department local receipts such as building permits. There's also investment income. There's a number of things that go in that sort of outside of the tax revenue that the town takes in. So the past couple of years, I'll read them out because I know it's pretty small. So for FY '24, the actual for that was 9.5 million. For '23 was 8.7 million. For '22 is 5.8 million. And then remember, these next 3 years are also, COVID related. FY '21 was 5.6 million, FY '20 was 5.6 million, FY '19 was 5.9 million. So if I'm projecting that we will take in $5 million of local receipts, what we don't want to do is overestimate that. We always want to be conservative. So I feel comfortable raising that total amount by the $500,000 to 5 million, just looking at actuals for the last number of years and sort of where we're trending, that we will be over that estimated amount, and still be conservative with that. As I just presented in the last slide, the next bullet is updated state aid revenue. So obviously that helps out with the budget gap. It adds an extra $195,000 of revenue over FY '25. And the last piece here, bear with me as I sort of try to explain through this fully, but I'm also recommending we partially fund our pension assessment increase for FY '26 with free cash. So the free cash amount, so the amount of the increase for the pension assessment funded by free cash would be $320,000. So I've presented to the board over the past few months the situation with the Norfolk County Retirement Board and their most recent valuation report. So just to recap tonight, the Norfolk County Retirement Board hired a new actuary this past year. That actuary changed a number of assumptions all in the first year, which had a huge impact on FY '26. And this isn't just Westwood, this is every community in that system. And they did this without amortizing the impact of that through, say, 2035. So that unfunded liability amount, they're still trying to fund it by 2031. This caused a huge increase to our pension assessment as well as other communities. They received a number of pushback from us, but the Norfolk County commissioners went forward with voting the FY '26 number for the assessments, but they've decided not to vote on any future funding schedule. So basically this means we only have information for 1 year, which is not usual for FY '26. And it's not clear on what their next move is going to be. They're actually hosting a meeting in a couple of weeks with communities to hear them out again. So Westwood and many of the communities in the program have seen a steady or even a decline in the assessments in recent years. So for the past 2 years for Westwood, our increases were under 2%, just to put in perspective. So the average in Westwood's this year was closer to 9. So the average for all communities in the increase from FY '24 to FY '25 was 2%. So that's the assumption and the number that I was building into the budget for this year up until the actuarial report was released. So I am recommending free cash be used to fund that amount above a typical increase. So 2% of that increase will still be funded with taxation because of this high level of uncertainty. So basically what I'm recommending we do is smoothing out the impact of the Norfolk County Retirement Board's decision, which they should have done until we know more. And just to give you some background, if there's any questions on sort of what changes were made to the methods, all at once they reduced the assumed interest rate, they updated the mortality table, and they switched from a payroll-based method to an actuarial-based method. So that's just 3 of the big highlights that the new actuary they hired did. So is there any questions on that? I know it's a lot, so I'll pause for a minute.
So you said the standard 2% that we've seen every year is the one that is you're keeping that in the base operating budget as funded through taxation. And this 320, that I thought I remembered you saying that the jump from in the assessment was 600K.
It was then further reduced by 130,000 because of that sort of lump sum payment that we just get to do. So that brings it down to $470,000.
Thank you. Okay, that makes gotcha.
Thank you for highlighting that. That's an important piece. Thank you for that.
Okay.
And just to remind everyone, we're also in the last, I mean, I hate to say this out loud, but since they aren't really saying that they're going to push back the fully funded date, we are in the last 5 or 6 years of this. They're still planning on being fully funded by 2031. So it's just sort of trying to get us to that finish line here without having a significant impact on taxpayers.
And I'll just add to that to say that the increase we are seeing this year was unforeseen, and completely outside of the realm of what we have seen before relative to the pension assessment. And as you point out, Stephanie, this is a liability that we will only have for a few more years, thankfully. So I am comfortable in addressing this spike that was unforeseen with free cash.
Stephanie, I guess one of the questions, as I heard you say some of the adjustments that they made, you said they had reduced the interest rate. Given sort of current conditions and the fact that the Fed has basically paused on any further reductions, will that be captured in future assessments and help us not be looking at a $600,000 nut again next year?
I'm hoping, but to be honest, their interest rate is something that probably should have been addressed years ago, just at a more steady rate than they're doing all in 1 year. They were high to begin with, if I'm being honest. So, but that is one of the things that is being brought up, that maybe it could be done in a more smoothed out way instead of all in 1 year. Yes. Okay, I'll move on if that's okay, unless there's any other questions. And obviously this will all, I mean, we'll be discussing this much further during the FinCom process and as we go forward. So just wanted to sort of highlight that tonight to get the conversation started. So I've already said this, but the municipal budget provides a diverse range of services throughout the town. I'm going to shift over to the municipal budget for a minute. The bulk of this budget is made up police, fire, DPW. There are also departments that provide programs, services of all ages, such as the COA, library, recreation, youth and family services. There are then the state required services that are focused on health and safety and well-being of the town, such as zoning, health, licensing, economic development, and then general government, the departments that do the billing, collecting, the town clerk's office, town administration. So all of that rolls up into our municipal budget. And this is just a breakdown, pie chart showing the allocation by department, and then a list here for that overall 4.9% increase. We say this a lot, and Molly already touched on this tonight. Thank you, Molly. But a major portion of the municipal budget is spent on staffing. It's a salary-driven department. As you can see here in blue, 83% of the budget is staffing that provides direct services to the residents. So that's sort of what this slide is just highlighting. So the salary changes in the FY26 budget. Here's the breakdown between salaries and expenses for the 4.9. Approximately 1.4 million, or 100% of that, of the total increases for salaries. We were able to offset a portion of that with a reduction to overall expenses without further reducing funding for the most critical services and program areas. But within that $1.4 million increase, this includes salary, contractual obligations, COLAs, step increases for staff, and any mid-year adjustments that happen during FY25. So then that municipal budget is really just a piece of the overall operating budget. So the proposed FY26 operating budget, as it stands right now, is 120.7 million, which is a 4.4% increase over the current year. So the largest piece of that budget is the schools, which is a current increase of 3.5%, and then the municipal at 4.9%, fixed costs at a 7.6% increase, and then debt, which slightly decreases. So there's a positive. And then the last piece is sewer operating, which is funded through sewer retained earnings. So this is all of this here, all these categories are what make up, when we get to town meeting, we start talking about Article 3, the omnibus article. That's sort of what's represented in that. And as I mentioned earlier, some items we're still waiting for that are included in this outside assessments are Blue Hills and MWRA, and then the health insurance piece. This is a lot of numbers on one page, but we wanted to highlight and kind of bring together the big picture of the overall proposed expenditure budget. So the largest piece of this is the operating. See how we're building. So the operating budget is part of the overall expenditure budget. That's made up of school, municipal, fixed costs, sewer, and debt. And then there's the capital budget, and then various reserves and liabilities that we have to fund. So the FY26 proposed expenditure budget is 129.7 million, a 5.6% increase over the current year. And there's just a breakout right there of what makes that up. And then, as it should, you know, when we have a balanced budget, we're balancing that on the revenue side, right? So the revenue sources included in the budget fund the expense side. There's a number of revenue sources, including taxes, which of course is always our main revenue source. We talk about that a lot. Restrictions on Prop 2.5. When we talk about that, it's because 80% of our overall revenue budget is taxation. Then the second largest piece is state aid. Then we have our sewer enterprise funds, local receipts, other available funds, meals and hotel tax this year because part of that is funding a capital budget, and then free cash. So that all has to match up to the 129.7 million that I showed on the expense side to get a balanced budget. So sort of bringing that all together, this is a comprehensive plan that provides for high quality services, town and school. Overall budget growth, 3.5 for the school, 4.9 for municipal, 7.6 for fixed costs. We then have our base capital budget funded with free cash. Then we have a number of supplemental capital budgets funded with either free cash, meals and hotel tax, or other funding sources such as ambulance receipts, sewer retained earnings, and cemetery trust funds. We then have our liabilities and reserves, the yearly transfer from free cash to the stabilization fund, as well as the contribution to our OPEB trust fund. Both keep us on track with our financial policies and our required funding plan. We then have our additional capital article, that requires borrowing. So that's the sewer 500,000 MWRA, no interest loan. We then have, just because it is funded with free cash, I'm putting it in here as part of the budget articles, the additional senior tax relief through the aid to the elderly fund of $300,000. So all this rolls up, as I just said, to the balanced budget between projected revenues and projected expenses. And sort of my last slide here, wrapping this all up, to pull it all together. The overall budget is a comprehensive plan that includes the operating budget, capital, funding of different liabilities and reserves, and this all must address multiple needs to provide for quality services and financial strength in the town. So the goal is really to provide a high level of service while balancing that impact on the taxpayers and balancing all the needs of the departments within the town. So next steps, for your February meetings, I'll continue to update and review the FY26 budget with local revenue sources, any updates on state aid, assessments, capital budget. I will then, after tonight's meeting, what I'll be asking the board to do is approve and give the okay for this municipal budget to move forward. That document will then be released. It'll be sent out to department heads, posted online, and then we will follow up after that with the overall municipal summary document, which will also be distributed and posted online. I will then present that FY26 budget to the FinCom on February 12th. And then all the warrant articles will be presented on the budget side at their public hearing on March 25th. And I'm happy to take any questions. I'll stop sharing for now, and then if I need to, I can bounce back in if there's any specific questions on a slide.
Thank you, Stephanie. Rob, you must have some questions.
I mean, I've asked many of them as we've gone through, Joe, so I'd be happy to let you all go first, you know.
Mary Ann.
Stephanie, great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, same. Thank you, Stephanie, for all your work. For those who might be tuning in for the first time in a while, we've been discussing the budget for months now. And in addition, what you don't see are the individual conversations that the three of us as select board members have with Stephanie and Chris and department heads in the long run up to this point. And a lot of my questions have been asked as well. I really appreciate Stephanie in a challenging year, particularly given the fixed costs, all of your work and, by our charter, the finance director and the town administrator are responsible for producing a balanced budget to the select board, and you have done that. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marianne. Stephanie, I think you hit on a couple of the things, but on slide 5, and I wrote you today, further reduce expense budgets by 140K. What were those items eliminated?
Yeah, sure. So included in that is the 55,000 that was discussed at the last meeting, the townwide newsletter. So that was cut from the budget. I reduced the hardware software budget by about $25,000. That's sort of the IT world of things. Then took a look at that really heavily. What the other decrease was in fixed costs was the Medicare Part B, which Molly walked through on both the town and school side, looking at what the actuals were for the last couple of years and matching that up and cutting that budget back down.
Well, I was kind of excited about some of that software stuff, Molly. Can I still be happy?
I would still say that there is a software proposal in the capital budget for replacing the payroll and software. So that's in a different bucket, and we are
Okay.
still very excited about that. So
Okay,
yes, you
okay.
still have something to be excited about.
I was nervous. Thank you, Molly. Rob, go ahead.
No, I think Stephanie, outstanding job getting to the balanced budget. And I think that, based on your description of the adjustments made either on reductions of anticipated expense or adjustments to revenue, I think those are all reasonable and conservative. Obviously the last couple of years on the local receipts side certainly are higher, but I think you're definitely taking a conservative approach to that, and just an incremental $500,000 in there is a prudent measure, right? Because we don't want to ever get out ahead of ourselves. So I'm comfortable that the budget is balanced at this point. I think there's probably things that as we go through, I was looking, Chris, at some of the highlights of things that you had talked about for past years and upcoming years, and I think we touched on this one earlier when we were talking about the ADA study. You highlighted the facility study as something that was an accomplishment essentially in this budget year, but I suspect that'll be something that we are going to have a long and sort of collaborative series of public discussions. So I think that's something that'll be part of the fiscal year 26 activity, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I think, otherwise I'm comfortable at this point with where you have gotten to, Stephanie. I've got, I was very, very pleased that you were able to get there and make up the ground that we were staring at just a short time ago.
Right. Thank you for that.
And let me add, if I may, Rob, talking about FY 26, we've obviously had a very long discussion about the operational budget and what we can fund and what we want to fund. We have heard about potentially exciting grant opportunity relative to public safety, which may save us on the operational side. So I would like to suggest that once we get into FY 26, that this board, perhaps the chair in conjunction with the town administrator, our finance director, our public safety chiefs, and perhaps others meet on a regular basis to talk about the operational needs and the operational opportunities in the operational budget going forward. So doing that over the summer into the fall to really take a hard look and strategize, keeping in mind these opportunities that are coming down the pike. So I just throw that out for consideration and thought as we think about moving into FY26 once we get past town meeting.
Understood. That is probably something that is, we've certainly all three been clear in our commitment to trying to get to staffing levels and things like that. So as different opportunities avail themselves, and quite frankly, as some of the new growth becomes realized, it'll be incumbent on us to try and figure a way to get there. So I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Thanks, Marianne. I still have some questions, and I'll pester Stephanie some more like I did today, but I really think some of the public safety things have to go front and center, as you said, Marianne. I believe very strongly in that. But that being said, coming up to 8:20, are there any questions from the audience? Tish?
I don't see any questions right now. We have one resident with her hand raised. Oh, sorry, there's one question just came.
Okay.
Would you like me to read it, Joe?
Yeah, I can't open it up. Oh, please. Yep.
Nada Elizabeth Fabrizio, 32 Webster Street. Despite town council's opinion, I still believe that back in 2019, our select board wandered around the scope of its authority by creating an assistant town administrator position and concurrently appointing an individual to that capacity without the benefit of an amendment to our existing town charter in the form of a proposed warrant article. Well, prior to 2019, town meeting abolished that particular title and position. I would like to learn what the cost was to taxpayers when Pam Dukeman was finance director and just prior to retirement was then awarded the additional title of assistant town administrator. It seems logical that awarding the title of assistant town administrator came with the cost to taxpayers, especially as it relates to pension assessments. Subsequent to Pam's retirement, we awarded that title, assistant town administrator, to both the new finance director and the human services director. What is the real cost of that title to taxpayers?
Who would like to take that? I don't have the information.
I don't have the information back from 2019 right now, Mr. Chair, but I do believe there was I believe it's human resources director, I believe is what the position that Nada is referring to, if I'm not mistaken, Nada, and not the human services director. What we did have, just for everyone's benefit, on the turnover, when the retirement of both our prior assistant town administrator, finance director, and our prior HR director, when we had Molly and Stephanie join, we did have a difference in compensation for both positions. I think one position was slightly higher and the other position was significantly lower from a salary standpoint. I just don't have those dollars with me right now.
And this was done, I assume, within the framework of our town charter.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Town Council, the reference to 2019 might have been prior to my arrival.
Or it was about the same time. And the position that she's talking about was Pam Dukeman. And Pam Dukeman was actually given the title Assistant Town Administrator long before 2019. And I exchanged emails with Ms. Fabrizio about that back at that time. I'll have to go back in my system to see if I can find that information. It was actually 6 years ago. But there was some time previous to that that Pam was given the title Assistant Town Administrator by the Select Board. And I don't think I was even on the Select Board when it was first done, but I could be wrong about that. And not all titles come from the charter. Not all positions come from the charter. Or the bylaws for that matter. There's a certain amount of managerial leeway that the town administrator and the select board are given to run the town. So that's
Thank
the
you,
short
Pat.
answer.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Thanks, Chris. Tish, it looks like there's a second one there from Mary Marcy Phelps.
Yes, it's Mary Massey Phelps, 295 Clapboard Tree Street. I would like to make a few comments as an engaged Westwood citizen of 30+ years and as a former member and chair of the Finance and Warrant Commission. I think that overall our elected officials and professional staff do an outstanding job managing the town. The select board is responsible for bringing forth a balanced budget that will best meet the needs of the whole community and provide high levels of services to residents in all areas. My message to the select board is to stay the course and continue to work with our professional staff and other boards to see the budget process through. The process works and helps us avoid unintended consequences. I thank our paid staff for your good work, and I thank the board for your time, your thoughtful consideration on behalf of our residents, and your service to our town. I would also like to thank Chair Privatera for commenting on meeting decorum and the importance of civility in our civil discourse.
Thank you, Mary. I always said you were a rock star when you're on the FinCom, and you still are in my book. All right, let's give that 15 seconds, and I think we have to move on. Unless somebody knows something I don't. I don't believe we need a motion on this. I think. Oh, Stephanie, so you're all set with this presentation for tonight, is that correct?
I'm not sure if the board is to formally vote on it. But I would just take as Chris is shaking his head, yes, I would just take an approval to move forward with the budget as it is proposed and release those documents.
Mr. Chair, I believe the board needs to vote on it so it becomes your budget.
I believe that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I have a question then. Where do we stand with the waste contract? Wouldn't that be in this budget?
The budgeted amount submitted by the Director of Public Works is in the budget.
I know how that meeting went. Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
Joe, I do see an attendee has her hand raised.
Oh, thanks, Marianne. Kathy Wallace, Farm Lane, my hand is raised. I'm sorry, I don't see it. So Kathy, I assume you want to speak, is that it?
Yes.
I don't.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi. I'm going to try to go quickly tonight because I know I've taken time in the past few meetings, but I have basically 3 different things I want to say. First of all, I think this is a wonderful meeting tonight, Stephanie. That was the best budget presentation that I've ever seen. It had clarity, it had transparency, and I think it answered a lot of questions from the previous meeting. And I think when people get their questions answered, frustration level goes down. I do see here kind of a fluid budget, and I'm a little bit excited about that because, as you well know, I think it's a travesty not to fund public safety, and this year with a particular focus on the 2 firefighters that we didn't get the previous year. So I just want to ask the board, and I think the answer is yes, but I would just like to get a commitment from each of you that those 2 firefighter positions will remain a priority should there be any flexibility in the budget, since it does seem a little bit fluid as it goes through the FinCom process. I mean, state aid is more positive, I think, maybe ambulance fees. I do see things that might contribute. So would each board member say that they will keep those 2 firefighters as a priority if budget flexibility permits?
That's certainly a priority in my book, Kathy.
Thank you, Joe.
I Just as a matter of parliamentary procedure, Kathy, I think I'm happy to respond to you after you've used your time.
Oh, okay. Okay. So then moving on, so it would be great if we could fund those this year, but if the unfortunate happens and we get pushed into FY27, Rob, you're going to be chair in FY27, and I'd just like to ask, what steps should the town take this year, even starting now, to be sure we can fund those 2 positions or more in FY27? Do you have any suggestions of how we can
Bob,
not be having this conversation a year from now?
Happy to do that, and I'll take the same answer, Mary Ann.
Okay.
Finish your questions, and
No,
I'll
wait a minute.
happy to do
Fine.
that.
Kathy, you're at the 1 minute mark. Just so you know.
Oh, good. Okay. I'll slow down a bit then. And I did get an indirect answer to my question that I had been asking about the classification raises. Molly, thank you for explaining that. And I think I'd like to just say what I thought was correct was that it doubled the impact, because Molly, you said it was 285,000 for the 116 employees, and you gave them half of that already in the first half of the second half of FY25 in January. So I'm a little disappointed by that, because I think that was kind of slid through at your November 4th meeting. The board didn't take any action on that. I mean, I don't know what's required. I don't know if the board has to authorize that, but knowing we were approaching a tough budget season in November, that we put through something that impacted the budget for $285,000 when we now can't fund the 2 firefighters. So I just want to see a commitment to these 2 positions should money become available. I mean, I think there's a lot of assumptions. You're partially funding something with free cash. I don't see why we can't fund all of it with free cash. There's a lot of money in free cash. And there was a net change to revenue of 195,000. And I'm going to stop there. I will just emphasize, I think there's fluidity in this budget, and I think we all agree public safety is a priority. Our firefighters, they need staff, and we can be creative and find a way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, who wants to go first, Rob or Mary Ann?
I'm happy to go first. Kathy, thank you for the question. I appreciate your passion for public safety, and I think you have seen that the 3 of us share it. So that's point number 1. Point number 2, I think you said something important about fluidity, flexibility, and that is really the job that we have, because what ends up on our plate often changes from what what we expect. So there is that constant exercise of being flexible, planning, but needing to be flexible when things change. I will say categorically that I am committed to growing the department, to funding, to get us to the 11 that we have discussed. That is, my commitment. We've made it before as a board, and I will make that individually. I will also say that as a board member, I am very focused on getting a new main fire station. And as folks may know, we funded 2 new firefighter positions last year with our last budget going into this fiscal year. So at the end of June, we only recently hired 1 despite best efforts. And
Oh
one
my
of those
God.
positions, I'm sorry? One of those positions is still open. And I suspect that part of the reason we are having trouble filling that position, despite, in addition to the shortage of paramedics, is the state of Fire Station 1 as it currently exists. So I'm very hopeful that we can all come together as a town to get this done once and for all, to protect the people who protect us and to further protect all of the residents of Westwood. Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. Rob, you've been
Sure
sitting
thing.
tight. Go ahead.
I believe the question from Ms. Wallace to me was, am I committed to this? And I am. And I think the suggestion that Marianne had raised earlier during the discussion about continuing to keep this as a priority focus through ongoing discussions as different potential revenue sources emerge, whether those be awarding of grants or potential, new growth that comes on. I think that is something that, we're all looking to try and do this. It's just a matter of making sure that we're able to do so in a sustainable way. And to the second part of your question about, thinking we should use free cash to do so, part of the reason we can't do that is the addition of personnel is an ongoing expense. So in Stephanie's case, where she showed that we were taking the amount above the 2% for the pension, this is a one-time situation where we're able to say, okay, that's an appropriate use of free cash in that instance, right? This was an unplanned, unexpected, incremental expense, but it's not the type of thing that you're hiring people and they're now part of the payroll on an ongoing basis. So I wouldn't say, our financial policies say you can't use the free cash that way. So I am committed to trying to get us to the 2 additional firefighters, and I'm committed to trying to find, I've been saying for the entire 4 years that I've been on the board now, that we need to continue to identify sources of new growth and, most importantly, commercial new growth.
Can I say something here?
Looks like Joe's offline. I'm going to say yes, Chief.
Okay.
There you are, Joe.
Sorry, I was printing something. Sorry.
That's all right. Of course, we need those positions. I understand the position the town's in. I appreciate everybody pushing for it. I really, truly do. The department appreciates it. I've had talks with the unions there, with the union. They get it, and we're gonna move forward as a team. And they agree with me that Station 1 is our biggest priority right now. I really think that should be the focus after this meeting moving forward, is to put a full court press on for that. So that's where I'm at with this.
Thanks for sharing that, Chief.
Yep.
Were there some more questions there, Tish?
You do. Well, it's a
Think
few
I see
comments though, so,
Aye.
Kate Nee, 10 Cedar Hill Drive. I would like to thank town staff for their great work. I do want to thank Mr. Gotti for repeatedly asking about the risk associated with various numbers. It is helpful to hear that kind of pressure testing. I remain confident that the select board values safety for town residents and staff and moves forward whenever and wherever possible, no question. And then there's a note from Claire Galkowski, 320 Dover Road. Thank you for bringing up the solid waste budget, Joe. I don't want to speak for them, but my sense from Todd and Brendan is that they will continue to negotiate with Waste Management on the collection contract. I owe them some more data, but we had a good meeting. And then there's a note from Nancy Hyde, 15 Martingale Lane. I would like to thank Ms. Cummings for her suggestion to have serious discussions after town meeting regarding public safety, staffing, and potential funding sources. It is never easy to fund new positions when budgets continue to be so tight. Our public safety staffing is a high priority in this town and requires the attention you'll be giving it. Then there's one more note from Kathy Wallace, 283 Farm Lane. I meant use the free cash for the $600,000 assessment, not salaries. I suggest a hiring freeze for non-direct service positions.
My apologies, Ms. Wallace, if I misunderstood your question. Sorry.
You do have a few hands raised, a few attendants' hands raised, attendees.
Is Mary one of them?
Mary Macy Phelps and John Cummings.
Let's go with Mary.
Oh, no, she just tried, no, no longer. We still have John Cummings though with his hand raised.
Okay, let's go with John.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello,
John,
and
you're up.
thank you.
Yep, yep.
So usually I don't say anything because I know someone on the board very closely. However, as someone that's volunteered hundreds of hours in the town, from everything from PTO presidents, the elementary school, the middle school, the high school, I've coached over 45 teams. I was on the housing authority for over 10 years. I just want to say that the town staff is absolutely amazing. And how you guys all work together, regardless of any outside noise, to put everything together is just a tremendous effort. And I do want to echo Mary Macy Phelps' words that she put it. I wasn't able to type nearly as fast. However, I'm also on the permanent building committee, and the need at Fire Station 1 is so bad that I hope that we can focus on just FS1 and get that over the finish line. And I'm sure that with that completed and a safe building for everybody to work in and sleep in, not sleep in chairs, that it would be a much better environment to hire someone to that new building than to try to squeeze somebody in and out. And I do appreciate everybody's opinions that calls in, but you won't hear from me for a while, so good luck.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Thanks for all your volunteerism. All right. I don't see anything else, Tish, do you?
We do not. That was it.
All right. So who's making the motion?
I'll be happy to, Joe. I hereby move that the select board approve the FY 26 budget as presented.
Second that motion.
Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, Mary Ann?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries.
Thank you all for your support. Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Thanks, Steph.
Thank you all.
Molly, we're not letting you out of here. You're up next.
That's fine. My presentation will be shorter than Stephanie's. So just a very brief update on FS1. Last month, we presented to the Finance and Warrant Commission. This was a really great meeting. We had some really great dialogue. Tomorrow, we're inviting all residents to a community informational meeting at the library at 6 p.m. to learn more about the project. And then looking forward to the next few weeks ahead, we anticipate an updated cost estimate from Doran Whittier sometime in late February and plan to present that to you at your first meeting in March. The project is still scheduled to go out to bid in mid-March, with the bid opening in mid-April. And all of this is gearing up for a final FinCom public hearing on FS1 on April 28th, town meeting on May 19th, and a special election on June 3rd.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Rob or Marianne, do you guys have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Joe. I just wanted to add to what Molly said. You know, for those of you who are watching tonight or at any time before tomorrow night, please talk to your neighbors, folks who may not know about the FS1 project, and please encourage them to come, or it will be recorded, correct? So you can watch it at your leisure. But it's really important that everybody be educated on what this project is and why it is so urgently necessary for the town. Chief Lund, thank you for your words earlier. And you know, I don't want to, this is a long meeting, so I don't want to take a lot of time, but please help us to educate residents and to help them become educated. Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. Rob?
Nothing further, Mr. Chair. I know we'll have a lot of discussions tomorrow night.
Thanks. All right. Thank you, Molly. Next, we have acceptance of grant award FY 25 Fire Safety Equipment Grant. Attending is Chief Lund. For background, on January 17th, 2025, the town was notified by the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security and the Department of Fire Services that the Westwood Fire Department was awarded $11,759.99. They just couldn't bring it up one more penny. In FY 25 for the Firefighter Safety Equipment Grant. The fire department will be using the grant funding to purchase a complete set of structural gear. Chief Lund, would you like to tell us about that?
Absolutely. So last year, they signed into legislation that all turnout gear now has to be PFAS free or non-fluorinated. We had till 2027 to get most of the frontline gear at least ordered. And I figured that this was a way to supplement that cost. So I put in for it. I wanted 19, they gave me that, but I'll take what we get, you know? And we'll go forward from here.
Well, nice work. And for the folks that don't know, the PFAS is the carcinogen that's in the firefighter's protective gear.
Yeah, they can't call it PFAS free anymore because PFAS is in all of our water. So as soon as we wash it and then they test it, it's no longer PFAS free. So it's non-fluorinated.
Okay, thank you for that.
So, yep.
Mary Ann, any thoughts, questions?
Nope, I'm happy to make a motion if folks are ready.
Absolutely, Chief. Just thanks for constantly pursuing any available funds to help offset the cost to, re-outfit the department.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
That.
I'm ready.
I hereby move that the board accept the FY 2025 Firefighter Safety Grant Award of $11,745.99 and authorize the town administrator to sign the grant documents.
Second that motion.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you, Chief. Thank you,
Thank
Chief.
you. Thank you all.
Jeff, call it a night. It gets slow from here on, man. All right, next we have liaison reports. I don't have any updates at this time other than with the off-leash dog park. Chris and I will be meeting with some of the school folks this Friday. That's it for me. Rob?
Nothing from me today. I think we've been going for a good long time. I'll pass and wait till next time.
I agree. Mary Ann?
Nothing for me either.
Okay. This is where I usually drop the ball, so let me see if I can stay on target. Let's see. Meeting minutes, Tish, you did an update on that. They look fine to me. Anybody want to make a motion on accepting the meeting minutes for January 6, 2025?
I hereby move that we accept the regular meeting minutes for January 6, 2025 as written.
Second that motion.
Roll call, Mary Ann?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Is there any other business that may come properly before the board? Public and press?
No questions.
Thanks, Tish. Therefore, the select board will be going into executive session to discuss one issue pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to potential litigation involving the property at 637 High Street, discussion of which would have detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if the discussion were in open session. The board will not be returning to opening session. And our next meeting is scheduled for February 24th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. And I hope everyone can make the meeting tomorrow night at the Westwood Library.
And with that, I'm happy to make a motion, Joe.
Please.
Hereby move that the select board go into executive session for the aforementioned reason.
Second.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well.
Good
Thank
night,
you all.
everyone.
Night,
Thank
everybody.
you all very much. I didn't drop anything off this time.